Okay. Okay. Welcome to Verbling. Hello, I'm Teacher Oakley. Hello, Heidi again.
Hello?
You're very quick to get in the class.
Let's see again.
Before it's even broadcasting, before I'm even live, you're in the class. It's amazing.
And even you are very quick. Robin Williams quote. Next lesson.
That's the next one. Yeah.
Very quick.
This class,
Fish.
fish stories. Okay. Fish stories is a euphemism. I have never done this class before.
Not fishy stories.
Fish stories, but fish stories is a euphemism. It's a kind of idiomatic. A fish story, or another way to say it, tall tales. Okay, this is basically an exercise in exaggeration. This is an American tradition, probably, really, maybe sadly even, kind of an American tradition from bygone days, an old American tradition. I don't know that people really do this anymore. My grandfather used to do this, and somewhat my dad, my uncles, but I don't think people really do this anymore. What I'm talking about is people would sit around late at night, maybe having some drinks or whatever, socializing, just talking, and they would share stories, anecdotes, basically, stories about themselves or what have you, and they would, for fun, just for amusement, they would completely exaggerate the details. Why it's called a fish story is because often these stories would have to do with fishing was a common story. You know, I battled the fish for 16 hours. He pulled me overboard, and I had to. Luckily I grabbed the anchor and wrapped it around my arm, which prevented me from drowning. After 16 hours, I pulled the fish into the boat, and the fish was so large he swamped the boat. The boat started to sink, but luckily I had 50 peanut butter sandwiches, which my grandmother had made me, and they were floating, and I was able to grab the peanut butter sandwiches and push off with some celery sticks and make my way gradually to shore. And then when I brought the fish onto the shore, just as I was about to pull him onto the shore, he leapt into the air, swallowed all the peanut butter sandwiches, and swam out into the ocean. Ta-da! A fish story, a grossly exaggerated, ridiculous story which could never be true, with insane details anyway, that's a tall tale. We have tall tales in American culture about, for example, has anybody here ever heard of Paul Bunyan? Probably not. This is very American, okay? Paul Bunyan. Whoops, Paul.
No.
Bunyan. You ever heard of Paul Bunyan? Wenting, hello, welcome.
Glad to see you again.
Good to see you again. And Paul Bunyan and his big blue ox named Babe. Have you ever heard of Paul Bunyan? No? No? Nader? Paul Bunyan or...
No.
No? Nope. Or maybe Johnny Appleseed? Hi, Nader, by the way.
Hi.
Hi. Michael, hello. Greetings. Welcome.
Hi.
Hi. Michael, have you ever heard of Paul Bunyan or Johnny Appleseed?
No.
Okay.
But I can Google them.
Yeah. They are Casey Jones. There's another one. Actually, the more I think about it, I can think of a bunch of them. There was number of stories, and people would make up different stories about these characters. Paul Bunyan was a lumberjack. Do you know what a lumberjack is, by the
Yeah.
way?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. A forester, somebody who gets
Cutting tree.
cutting trees. That's it. Exactly.
And
Anyway.
blacksmith.
Blacksmith works with iron, and
Yeah.
Anyway, Paul Bunyan, yeah, he was a lumberjack, not a real person. Okay, this character. Oh, and people would tell tall tales about Paul Bunyan and his big blue ox. He had an ox named Babe. Anyway, they were enormous. Paul Bunyan was like 30 feet tall. He carried an axe that weighed 2 tons. Crazy, crazy things. Casey Jones was an engineer. And Johnny Appleseed, there's folklore, a tall tale that Johnny Appleseed crossed the country in the United States just planting apple trees everywhere he went, all across the states. And that's why there are apple trees all over the United States now. Anyway, sometimes these tall tales would be to explain things, how the Rocky Mountains were formed, or how the Mississippi River was formed, or why there's apple trees all over. Anyway, now we don't have to get that crazy. I would like to try this with you guys. I've done classes before where we practice telling anecdotes, stories about our unusual things in our lives. Very similar to actually what we just did in our last class, Truth or Lie. Telling these same kind of stories that you guys were telling in the last class. But instead of telling them so they sound real, and we can't tell if they're a truth or a lie, we're going to try telling these stories in a ridiculously exaggerated way, exaggerating the details as much as you can. All right, so nothing. So don't worry about how ridiculous. You can't possibly sound too ridiculous. Don't worry about that. But picking a story similar to the stories we were telling in the last class, like you did, talk about an anecdote, but really exaggerate the details. Talk about a time you were lost, or an embarrassing situation, a fight with your boss, a trip in the forest, a really hard job you had to do, why it was so hard. It's very, I don't know if you guys, to get you thinking, I don't know if you experience this in your cultures, but in your respective cultures. But in American culture, when you talk to your father, or even better, your grandfather, and he tells you about the old days, the stories seem to get a little bit exaggerated. Well, in my day, when we had to go to school, we had to walk through the snow that was 14 meters deep. We had to tunnel through the snow to get to school, going 10 kilometers uphill all the way. And our books were made out of stones.
Yeah, the pioneers.
We had to carry them on our backs. Yeah, the stories get a little, Nadar, do you have stories like that from your grandparents? How tough it was.
And no, but I hear how lovely it was. So
How lovely it was.
Yes, you feel like the world was like dreamland or something.
Right. Okay. That's the idea. That's the idea. Maybe you can use that. That's great. Maybe you can tell a story about how your grandfather would describe the world. That'd be a great one. Good. Good. Michael, did you ever hear stories like that when you were growing up from your grandparents or whatever, older people? Michael?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Ah, there we go.
I have like so it's like father, it's brother of my mother. Who is here for me?
What? Like a
Brother,
riddle? No, it's not like
brother.
a riddle.
No, Oakley.
Oh.
I have a relative. He's brother of my mother. How do you call
Uncle,
it?
uncle,
Uncle.
uncle.
Uncle. Oh, okay. You're asking me a direct question. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
it's not a riddle.
Sorry.
So he was telling like stories. He used to tell stories like about his childhood or what
Uh-huh.
he does. He lives in countryside, and always he like exaggerated things like maybe he gave an advice to someone who was maybe ill or sick, or maybe he was in difficult situation, and he so much exaggerated, like he
Oh,
was
great.
near to die or something, and
Oh,
he like
great.
said you should do this, and that person did that and he survived, something like that. That was, I knew that that's like kind of lie, it's not like that.
Right, right. Okay, that's great. Good example. Those are tall tales or fish stories. Great. Um, okay. Heidi, in Japanese culture, do people tell tall tales about the old days?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I'm sure. Yeah, all kinds of stories. Okay, Heidi, I'm going to start with you since you were first in the class. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you can tell us one of these stories or adapt one of your own stories, whatever you want to do, but exaggerating
About
things.
my relative or not related,
Well, anything you want, really.
anything go on. Okay. I took a taxi in Kyoto. Kyoto is a very old city. About 100 years ago, it was the capital in Japan. Then it had been a capital for over 1,000 years. So there are
Kyoto?
Kyoto, yeah, there are many
Yeah.
old monuments and old stories. I took taxi. Taxi driver said, last year I was driving this place. This place means very old pond. We call it Midorogaike. It's an old pond. Then very weird place. Then some woman is stand up. She waved her hand. So he picked her up in his car. Then next corner, which I need to turn right or left, she already disappeared. The, on the seat, it was a lot of water. Then next, several days later, she drove the same place. A woman, white dress, was standing on that street, the same place. That she was the same person. He was very scared. When he waved her hand, but he ignored. When he passed by her, she laughed, very wide mouth. Mouth was very
Okay.
wide. He was very scared like that.
Okay. I think that's a true story. Okay. All right. All right. Okay. Great. All right. Good. Good. That's good. Good start. All right. That sounds like a story you really heard. All right. The idea is to exaggerate the details and exaggerate the story. Okay. Very good. Wenting. Wenting?
Hello. I
Hi.
forgot I mute the microphone.
Okay. No problem. First, do older people tell exaggerated stories to younger people in China? Is that common?
I think yes, it may be common, but I haven't heard a very just a fish story from elder people.
Okay. All right. You haven't really heard one? Oh, okay. You want to try to make up your own? just you became really very close. Actually, I know you can do it because your whole story about going mountain climbing and the police falling off a cliff and all that occurred to me. That was pretty much a tall tale. So I know you can do it. You want to make up your own story? And don't
Okay.
worry, it's not like last class. You're trying to fool us by making a lie seem like the truth. We all know it's a lie because this story's just too crazy to be believed. So go ahead. See if you can
It's
tell
about
us a story.
the experiment on the rabbits. Just
Great.
on the biological lab, we want to do experiment on the rabbit. On a really big rabbit, the length of that rabbit may be it's around 50 centimeters.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see how long. No, yeah, yes, it's not. Oh no, it's maybe around 1 meter. The length of the rabbit is 1 meter.
Okay.
So it's so big, we must tie it very tightly. After that, we still need 5 people to pin it because the rabbit is just move very very strongly. When it was pinned, we want to just inject the chemicals to let it sleep. We use a syringe with a diameter of 10 centimeters to inject that liquid.
Okay.
Actually, unfortunately, the first time we failed to inject the liquid into its vein, but just into its muscle. So, oh, okay, I forgot it. We inject that liquid from the vein of the ear of the rabbit. So, one of the air is there are so much liquids in the muscle of the ear, so the air is bound into a very big size. So we must use another ear. Fortunately, we succeed. So the rabbit slept, so we can do experiment.
Okay.
We use the seeker to remove the feather on its breast, and use a very blunt knife to cut its skin. You know that the knife is so blunt that it's very old now. It's so blunt that it's very hard to cut the skin. Actually, we tried 1 hour. Eventually, we succeed to open its breast. And then we use our small device to pin its artery, so the blood will not flow into its brain. And then we cut its artery and put a tube with a diameter of 10 centimeters into its heart. And actually, okay, it's too detailed. So after the experiment, we used the rope to fix the rabbit. We fix its artery, fix its skin, and okay, the rabbit is still lives in the lab and waiting for another students to do experiment on it.
Oh, and it lives on to this day. Okay.
Yes, it's almost 2 years.
Okay, all right. Actually, that is, that's very funny because that is in many tall tales or fish stories. the end of the story, and that fish is still in the lake to this day. The whoever is still alive and able to cause more problems or what. This is a very common ending, so that's very nice. Okay, that was very good. That was very good, Wenting. Good exaggerations. The knife was so blunt we had to cut his chest for an hour. That's great. A couple small things I couldn't figure out. You did something to the feather in its chest? What?
I mean the hair. Yes.
The hair.
Yes.
Okay, fur. Birds have feathers and rabbits have fur.
Oh, yeah.
Hair on an
Feather
animal.
is
We call it fur. Feathers are on a bird.
Thank
I'll
you.
say, sure. And one more thing, do not use very in front of a verb. We just can't do it. Very sleep.
Okay.
We can say he's sleeping very soundly. We can use very in front of an adverb.
Yeah.
Very deeply.
Okay.
All right.
Got it.
He slept very deeply, but you can't use very in front of a verb directly. Only with very deep sleep. We can use it in front, like with an adjective. A very deep sleep. Okay. All right. Well, actually, that was pretty good. What I was looking for is exaggerating details, and you definitely did. A 10-centimeter needle to inject him with. Okay. Very good. In tall tales and fish tales, everything's bigger. That's very normal. Good job, Wenting. Actually, that was actually quite good. Okay. Nader, I'm going to have you go next after I say hello to Araceli. Hi, Araceli.
Hi, Oakley. How are you?
Good. Welcome to the class. Nice to see you again.
Thank you.
Okay, we're telling some tall tales and fish stories. We're telling highly exaggerated anecdotes, okay, about anything, experiences or stories our grandparents told us or whatever. Nader, what are you going to talk about?
I'm gonna talk about fish, since it's a fish story.
Okay, great.
So, yes, last year, I guess, I was going to my wife to the Gulf here, and she was not swimming. She was going into the shallow water, so not deep water, so up to like her knee. And then I was watching from the bank. It's like not like a beach, but this Corniche type has this like a bank. And then I saw something under the water which looked like a shadow or a suspicious thing. I was not sure. So I kept watching for like 30 seconds or 40 seconds. Then it seemed like a big, very strange fish. Like it was not like a shark in shape, but it was very tall, like more than the average, any average fish or a big fish. So I thought I was still thinking it was a shadow. Then the movement under the water doesn't seem like a shadow because it was moving and more returning, and this type of movement of a real fish. So I told her, I called her, I told her, please come, and she took like 20 seconds coming, and it was very frightening for me because it was not very far from us. And I told her I saw something suspicious under the water, and she was very frightened. And I told her, I guess it was just a shadow, but that's why I told you to come back. Few days later, there was something in the news that in Iran, which is in the same Gulf, they found a strange creature, which was a very big fish, but it was dead, and it was very similar to the one I saw. I still don't know to date whether it was the same fish or it was something else. I still think that maybe it was just a shadow and it was a strange coincidence. But the funny thing, when she read this news, she now till date she still believes that it was the same thing I saw. And she says it cannot be a coincidence. But till date I cannot tell whether it was a coincidence or it was a real thing they found.
Well, that sounds like a true story.
Yes, it's a very, very true story.
Okay, all right. Well, not okay. Well, that's more like well, that's an anecdote. That's a story about something that really happened to you. Okay, all right. That's fine. Good job telling an anecdote. Great. But I want you guys to really go for it in exaggerating things. Everything's bigger, brighter, smaller, huger, more outrageous and crazy. Go wild in your exaggerations. It was the size of the Titanic. It really can't be too exaggerated for this exercise. We're just playing here. We're having some fun with this. Okay, Michael, what would you like to tell us about? Michael, are you there? Okay. Well, I have a story to tell you guys. Okay, Araceli, I'm going to come back to you, but I want to give you another example of a sort of a tall tale, exaggerated story. Now, the base of this story is actually true, but I'm going to tell it like a tall tale. Okay, back when I was living in the United States, I was living in Vermont, and where there are many lakes and rivers, beautiful areas. And there was a girl. She was who had grown up in Philadelphia. She had never left the city of Philadelphia, and this girl was very, very beautiful. Really, she looked like a movie star or a model or something. And I decided that I would introduce her to Vermont, the beautiful wilderness. So I asked her to go with me to the lake in my canoe. I wanted to take her out to a very remote area, to a lake, and go fishing and spend the day on the lake with her. And she was very excited because really she had never left the city before in her life. And so the day, I wait for the weekend, and I go to pick her up, and I've got my car with my canoe on the top, and she comes out with an elegant red evening gown, wearing beautiful diamonds and a tiara on her head, like kind of like she kind of looked like Araceli's avatar. In fact, she was blonde. Actually, she had red hair, raven red hair, as red as the sun, and which matched her evening dress. She was wearing high heels, 18-inch stilettos, so she was taller than I was. I had to fold her into the car like a folding chair and stuff her inside. I couldn't believe that she was dressed like that. We went to the lake. We drove to the lake, and first of all, on the way to the lake, it was an insane trip. She pointed to a large brown and green object and asked me, "What was that? What is that thing? It's so tall and bright and green." And I told her, "We call that a tree." Then she pointed to another object that had spots and made a sound. And she asked me, "What is that?" And I said, "That's a cow." And she was amazed at all the new beautiful things she was seeing. And I took her to the lake, and she looked out across the water, and she said, and she began to walk out into the water, And suddenly I realized she didn't know what water was. So I immediately picked her up and put her into the canoe. Uh, she she assumed that the water, the beautiful glass-like smooth surface, was like a ballroom, and she was going to walk out into the water. We went into my canoe, and uh, we started to fish. And I have many brightly colored fishing lures that spin around and flash and pop up and down in the water, and they do all kinds of things to attract fish. And I showed her, I opened up my fishing kit with thousands and thousands of different brightly colored, silvery, shiny lures. And she picked up this little rubber, totally indescript, nothing, silly looking rubber frog. And she said, I want to use this. It's cute. Oh, okay, you're never going to catch anything with that. But to humor her, and because she was so lovely, I put tied the little rubber frog onto her line, and she of course had no idea how to use a fish pole. She was just waving it in the air, and I was afraid she was going to hook my eyeball or something. So I threw it out for her. And I'm using lures, and I'm fishing, and I've got 2 pools going at once, and I'm working very hard because I want to impress her with my fishing prowess. And she's sitting there basically with her little rubber frog about 1.5 meters off the boat. She's going, come here, fishy, fishy, fishy. Fishy, fishy, fishy. Come on, fishy, fishy. And who would have thought it? Who would believe it? But suddenly something grabbed her line and pulled her to the end of the canoe and began to drag our canoe across the lake. And it continued to drag us across the lake, faster and faster and faster where we went, till we were cutting our own wake behind the boat. We looked like a motorboat in our little canoe. And the canoe was popped up into the air at a 45-degree angle, being dragged across the lake by the beautiful raven-haired Philadelphian and her little rubber frog. Well, it took us about 4 hours, but after about 4 hours, we actually caught this fish. This fish was about this big. The fish was seriously about 1 meter long and fat, like as round as my head. He was huge. I had to row ashore to bring this fish onto the land. She could not believe it. Actually, I could not believe it. We were both astounded. We tied the canoe and the fish onto the roof of my car. We went back to my house, where I prepared a giant fire pit and put a grate over it, and I cooked this entire fish. I cleaned it and cooked it that evening for our dinner, and we had a lovely dinner and a lovely evening together. And that's my story.
This fish still lives in me today.
This girl disappeared back to Philadelphia, and she still lives today.
This girl disappeared back to Venus, and she still lives today.
Yeah.
She doesn't know anything about planet Earth.
Actually, the truth is, I told it with exaggerated points, but the whole thing about the rubber frog and the girl from Philadelphia, it actually is true. And she actually did catch. She caught a huge fish, like I've never seen before. It was really, and the fact that she was sitting there going fishy, 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 actually that's true. So part of it's easy to exaggerate because it seems unbelievable, but true enough. She did not wear an evening gown fishing, though. Anyway, okay, there's my Exaggerated story. Okay. Michael, are you back? Are you here? Okay. Araceli, let's hear your exaggerated anecdote, a tall tale, a story. Or you can tell if your parents or grandparents ever told you an exaggerated tall tale or story about when they were young. I'd love to hear that too. Those are fun.
Okay, it's not about fishing exactly, but
It
doesn't
doesn't
matter.
have to be. It could be about anything.
Okay. I remember a tale, a story my grandparents told me,
Great.
and yeah, and they were living here in Valencia, and they told me something that was happening here when they were when they were children, or maybe before. I don't remember. But this is a tale about something that happened in the city a long time ago. In that time, the city had some walls all over that, and outside of the walls uh, there was countryside, and people were growing rice like there. And sometimes when people, especially children, would go out from the walls of the city, they were disappearing. And after a lot of time, they discovered there was some kind of strange animal or monster which was hiding uh, when where the rice is growing. There is water, and there is a lot of vegetation, and maybe canes, and between all that canes the monster was probably living. People were going very scared in the city because many children and young adults were disappearing, and the monster was eating them. Nobody had seen the monster, but it seemed like they sometimes said it was a dragon, and it was hiding, and it has huge teeth, and was very dangerous, and made some amazing sounds, and was something everybody was scared of. That they were so scared that they couldn't go out from the walls of the city. And then they started asking some very strong men to kill the creature.
Mm.
So some warriors went, some knights went out and tried to kill the dragon, but they were eaten by the creature. They disappeared and never came back. And people were very scared, and many tried one after the other, but no one succeeded. But then one day, one man was in prison, and he was going. He had been condemned to die. So he asked for leaving prison in order to try to kill the creature who was making everybody so scared. And he said, if you forgive me, if you give me back my freedom and my life, I'm going to kill the dragon. So they said, okay, we have nothing to lose because this creature is killing everyone here. We can't go out from the city. So they said, try. Everybody has tried, and they didn't succeed. But if you want to, you can try. So this man, what he did, everybody was very amazed because the day he went to face the dragon, he was wearing um, a dress, well, this kind of dress. I don't remember how to say this in English. It's like what a knight would wear.
Okay. A suit of armor.
Yeah, an armor, yeah, that. But it was made of with mirrors. So the
Uh-huh.
man was reflecting light so much that nobody could see him. He was really bright. So when he faced the dragon, the animal couldn't see anything, and because of the bright light, this man was reflecting. So he had a spear, and he throw the spear through the mouth of the huge mouth of the animal and kill it. So
Okay.
so that was what happened, and that's how the creature was killed. And I don't know if it's a real story. It doesn't
Of
seem
course
too
it
real,
is.
but there are proofs of it. I'm going to send you a link because here in Valencia we have in an important building we have the creature. It is hanging on the wall. You can see the link here. And this is the
Really?
strange animal. Yeah, I think it's a crocodile or something. I don't know, but yeah.
Okay.
This kind of thing
Oh
was
yeah.
living here maybe many years ago.
Oh, that's kind of possible.
I mean, the story is not probably it's not absolutely true, but some part of it must be. The animal existed someday.
Okay. Yeah, that looks like a crocodile to me.
Yeah, it's
All right.
strange because we have no crocodiles in Valencia, really. But maybe many years ago, I don't know.
Possibly many years ago there were. Who knows? Uh, okay. Well, that's all right. Very good. Okay. All right. Tall tale. Okay. Folklore, tall tales, mythology, these kind of stories. Okay. Very good. All right. That was a great example. That was very interesting, actually. That was a great story. Very cool. Uh, nice. Heidi, I wonder, Heidi, Heidi, are you there? Heidi? He's, oh, there you are. Do you know any stories like that? I mean, I know, like, okay, kind of, if not, but I'm just curious if you know any stories like Japanese mythology with dragons or amazing
Yes,
warriors.
mythology, yes.
Yeah.
Japan is an archipelago. Consists of four islands, mainland and Hokkaido and Kyushu and Shikoku, four islands. At
Uh-huh.
first, over 2,000 years ago, about 3,000 years ago, I'm not sure, the couple of gods came down from the heaven. Then man god had a long stick. He put his stick inside of the sea and screwed. He pulled out from the edge of the stick several drops of water dropped. Then it became Japanese archipelago. The god descend in the kind of land, the most southern part of island, Kyushu Island called. Then they made a lot of children. They became Japanese people. Then one of God is, we call it Amaterasu, means female god of sun. When she was in the outside, they're very bright. Then she hide in some place, hide herself. It became dark. And once her brother, younger brother, was naughty. He threw the naked horse in the place. There are many women were weaving the textiles. Then women ran away from that place. Then the god Amaterasu got angry. She decided to hide herself in the cave of Yam mountain. Then she closed the cave with a very big, huge stone. The world became darkness. Then people can't plant anything. They can't walk. So they talk about that. How can we do? So some god decided to have some dance party inside of the cave. A very a woman who had a very beautiful voice he sang in front of that cave, and the other female god danced in front of that place. The main gods were very glad, so they enjoyed. The female god, Amaterasu, she was very curious about outside. She opened the rock door a little. Then very powerful guy, Tajikaro, it's kind of strong, powerful man god, put his fingers inside of that slit. Then he opened the door. The the world became bright again.
Wow. That's awesome. Wow. Okay. I guess you do know. That's amazing. And you know what else is amazing? Or I was surprised that the sun god is female.
Mhm.
That's interesting. In most cultures that I'm aware of, the sun god is usually a male figure or masculine. It's very interesting that it's a female god. I've often wondered about that, to tell you the truth. But I guess the idea being the sun god is male and the earth god is female, the earth gives birth to things. I don't know. So I find that kind of unique. I never heard that before. I didn't know that before.
The first, the couple of god came down from the heaven.
Uh-huh.
They are ancestor of emperor.
Their ancestors were what?
Emperor, Japanese emperor.
Oh, okay. They're descendants, not their ancestors.
Not ancestor.
Ancestors are the ones before, and
Yeah.
descendants are the ones after.
After. So, emperor is a descendant of that god.
Right, right. Oh, I see.
Ancestor of the emperor.
Right, got it. That's right. All right, ancestor, descendant. Wow, that was impressive. Okay, thank you, Heidi. That was great. Very entertaining. Wow. Wenting?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know any Chinese stories like that? Any old Chinese stories like myths or tales or creation myths? Do you know any stories like that about dragons or heroes or these kinds of stories?
Dragons. Actually, I will just Google the dragon in Japanese and Chinese. Just they say the toes are different, the number of toes are different, and also dragon in China it's maybe it's a good creature. Actually, it symbols the king.
Okay. All right.
The story maybe I know two idioms in Chinese. One is just called 叶公好龙. It means a guy named Kai Ye, and he said that he was fond of dragon.
Okay.
So he drew dragon on the wall. Everything he used just contained the dragon. So one day, the dragon appeared because the dragon knew that he loved the dragon, loved it. So the dragon appeared. What happened?
Okay.
That guy was scared. It is just he is so scared and he was unable to come near to the dragon. Just he scared the dragon. So this idiom means that someone said that he loved something, but in fact he do not. He didn't. He didn't.
Ah. Okay.
And another idiom is just 画龙点睛. It's just one guy just draw a dragon on the paper. The dragon was drawn so well that everybody think it's live. Just the shortcoming is that the eye was not drawn. When the guy drew the eye of the dragon, just the dragon become alive. It flies into the cloud. Nowadays, the idioms was used to describe something, maybe a a sentence or a part of um, uh, a sentence in an essay or a part of an art is really good to make the whole pieces better.
Okay. All right. All right. To add the last touch. Well, in English we say to add the final touch.
Okay, and the
Is that
final touch.
okay? All right. I see. Well, those are interesting. Story. Interesting. Getting all kinds of stories here. Very interesting. Nader, are you there? Nader?
Yes, I'm here.
Great. Okay. Been sharing some very interesting stories, like not personal stories, but like cultural mythologies, if you will. Now, as an Egyptian guy, in such a deep, really deep, rich history, I'm curious. Do you have myths or origin myths? You know, how the world started or how Egypt started. Do you have? I mean, even I know about some of the ancient Egyptian gods, Ra and Horus, and all that. Isis.
Yes, and Isis, Osiris.
Yeah, right. I mean, are these stories still like told in Egypt? Like, are there stories about these gods, or are there different stories, or?
Yes, we used to be told these stories in history lessons.
Uh-huh.
But they tell you that this is the legacy of these pharaohs that they had told their people because they believed in this. Every pharaoh, you know, he was treated like a god,
Right.
and yes, and they have so many myths. For you say myths or myths
Myths.
or what?
Myths.
Myths.
It's actually a
You
hard word
start
to
with
say.
the th, then you end with s.
Yeah, it's
Myths.
hard to say. Myths. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
myths. They have so many myths for these pharaohs, and like every famous pharaoh, he was a god of something. Some was a god of fertility, goddess of fertility, and they
Hmm.
had a story for this. Someone a god of evilness, and they have a story for this. So they have so many, really, they have so many stories for each god of them, and they have like
Yeah.
wars between gods, conspiracies between these gods. So this
Right.
is really very common in the Egyptian methodologies.
Right.
You can say plural methodologies,
Mythologies. Yes, you can say plural.
mytho- mythology, and the science to study this mythology is methodology.
Mythology. Um, I'll try to write
Because
it.
I know that there is one word here is methodology, so I'm not sure what is
Uh, uh,
methodology.
that's that's a different word. Mythology is the overall study of these kinds of myths. A myth is an individual story, and mythology is, of course, the whole thing. I'm not sure if you're saying methodology.
Maybe methodology, maybe this to study methods of
That's
like methods of teaching or
Yeah, that's exactly right.
yeah.
Methodology. I misspelled that, by the way, if anybody's paying attention to the chat box. Methodology. And still, I misspelled it again. Okay, I give up. My methodology is not very good, I guess.
It's a method, then you add this ology.
Yeah, I know, and I keep typing it, but it doesn't come out that way.
So, by the way, when you said this sun for you is a female, the god of sun.
In Japanese culture, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So if you are talking about the sun, not forget about God or goddess. You think that sun is a male or female in your culture?
Ah,
Sun and
in
moon.
English speaker culture. Oh, the moon is always definitely a she, and the sun is usually a he.
And we, because it's the opposite in the Arabic culture.
Oh,
The
really?
sun is a she and the moon is a he.
Really? Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
because it goes to the Greek mythology, Greco-Roman mythology, and Apollo is the god, Helos is the god of the sun, and Diana, the huntress, is the goddess of the moon. So yeah, it goes back to Greek mythology ideas that the moon is female. Really? That's interesting. Hmm. Okay, that's
Yeah,
very
because
interesting.
when we're talking for us, everything like a cup. A cup is a male or female. Like not when we think about the cup, it's a male. When we think about the car, it's a female. If you know the
Interesting.
concept.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and
I'm
we
surely
use
I
it.
do.
Yes, yes,
Uh,
yes. Like in there and D in das in Germany. In German
right,
language,
right.
they have like yeah,
I
yeah,
know many languages have masculine, feminine, but
yes,
also even in it does and doesn't exist in English. I mean, in some cases it does, simple things like waiter and waitress, but also conceptually, things like a ship.
yes,
A ship is always a female,
yes.
even in
For
English.
us, it's always a female.
Yeah, same. Yeah, so there is the concept of masculinity and femininity to deal with the conceptual meaning. Right. Interesting. And I just wrote that down. Another good idea for a class talking about masculinity and femininity in English. Another great idea. Thanks, Nader.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Interesting class. Actually enjoyable. All right. But all good things must come to an end. So thank you, everyone, for sharing your stories, your tall tales, and your myths. Very interesting. Gotta go. I'll be back here at Verbaling shortly. Thank you very much.
Thank